a girl a-running in a group. She had a high-speed motor in a 44 coupe. She had a racing cam and a supercharged. Look at Buddy, hot rod at large. She's a hot rod. She's a hot rod.
U.S. issues $2 billion in electric vehicle tax rebates since January 1, the Treasury says. More than 250,000 tax credits have been issued for new EVs, electric vehicles, and around 50,000 for used models. Why are we still dumping our taxpayer money into this stuff? Well, we are. Since new rules took effect this year, allowing for consumers to take advantage of EV tax credits worth up to $7,500 at the point of sale, more than 250,000 tax credits have been issued for EVs and around, we know that. And the used models that carry up to a $4,000 rebate. So you can get $7,500 on a new EV and $4,000 on a used one. That doesn't cover the cost of the battery. Nearly all involving transferring the credit to a car dealer at the prime time or at the time of purchase, resulting in a significant rebate. The 2022 Inflation Reduction Act, I'm not going to tell you what I call it, created the point of sale rebate, as well as the used EV tax credit, lifted 200,000 vehicle manufacturer caps on credits, imposed income and vehicle price reductions or restrictions, and extended credits for leasing vehicles. They're desperate to get rid of these cars. They got lots full of them, fields full of them. It also imposed new restrictions designed to wean the U.S. electric vehicle and battery supply chain away from China. Like, that's a big deal. Get away from China. It is. Including requiring all electric vehicles be assembled in North America to qualify for any of this. Treasury on Tuesday released a new analysis from its Office of Economic Policy, estimating an electric vehicle owner will save $18,000 to $24,000 more than a person who purchased a comparable gasoline vehicle. The analysis tallies estimated annual savings, assuming a 15-year vehicle lifespan. We don't have a clue if any of these electric vehicles are going to make 15 years. Nobody knows. They haven't been around. They haven't been anywhere. Tesla's the only one that's been around, 10 years? Roughly, Chuck?
Yeah, a little bit longer than that at this point.
Yeah.
But, I mean, again, we don't know battery, what the batteries are going to do and stuff like that.
$2 billion of our tax dollars for these people that don't want this car, but they're going to take that tax credit. All right. Goshen. G-O-T-I-O-N. It's a plant. The Illinois judge couldn't rule out the possibility that claims against the controversial Chinese-owned battery factory in Manteno, Illinois, could be proved. So we may have the Chinese among us. What did they used to say in grade school? There's a fungus among us. Chinese battery maker Goshen announced a year ago that it would convert a vacant Kmart distribution center into a $2 billion factory that would eventually employ 2,600 people. It was a signature victory for Governor J.B. Pritzker's plan to put Illinois at the center of the move to electric vehicles. Well, Pritzker, you're nuts. But the plant immediately sparked opposition from some residents and politicians, including former Lieutenant Governor Gene Ives, who questions whether Goshen has ties to the Communist Party of China. That's a concern of all these people. A similar backlash occurred over the company's plan to build a factory in Big Rapids, Michigan, near Grand Rapids. So the anti-Chinese, Charles, is rampant. They don't want anybody. They don't want them messing with our car business. They don't want them undercutting our car business. They just want to build our own and be done with it. But now, Manteno could really use the economic development, but they're not going to let that happen. The government's not going to let them build there. The Chinese it has to come from here. So they're going to have to buy all their materials here. I suppose they'll let them open if they just keep it an American plant. I don't know. Now, here's another Chinese fortune cookie. The U.S. Commerce Department. Oh, by the way, Chuck, you know how you're trying to convert your DeLorean to an electric chassis?
Right.
I got a Volkswagen Beetle I'm going to convert.
That is actually a popular thing to do that.
I'm going to do that, and I'm going to call it the lightning bug.
There you go. Fantastic.
It'll be cool. U.S. Department of Commerce is planning to reveal proposed rules that would ban Chinese and Russian-made hardware and software for connected vehicles as soon as Monday, said people familiar with the matter. I got to tell you something about this, Chuck. We're going to talk about this, and we're going to talk about it heavy because I want to tell you something. Commerce has been meeting with industry experts in recent months looking to address security concerns raised by a new generation of so-called smart cars. The move would include bans on use and testing of Chinese and Russian technology for automated driving systems and vehicle communication systems, the people said. Now, while the bans mostly focus on software, the proposed rules would include some hardware. A spokesman said. The new restrictions would be enforced by the Commerce Department to prevent Chinese companies from collecting data on U.S. drivers, especially individuals, sending it back to China. The rules would also effectively keep Chinese suppliers from establishing a bigger foothold in the U.S., giving the American auto industry time to build its own supply chain for connected vehicles. Now, I got to tell you, Chuck, this whole deal and the experts and blah, 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 I don't know if you've been keeping up with world politics, but the cell phones and pagers were exploding. Okay?
Right.
In Ukraine or something, or Gaza?
No, right. It was Albania. Was it Albania? The Hezbollah.
Hezbollah, that's it. Well, somebody had access to these phones when they were building them.
Right.
And they've always had this ability. Can you imagine if my phone has that? Can you imagine if your car was to have that? It would be nothing terribly hard for a foe, a country that doesn't like you very well, to just start building all this into the software or hardware of the computers or the chips or something.
Yeah, it's pretty well known. So, I mean, obviously the explosives are kind of a big deal, but for the most part, even the idea of having back doors into things. So imagine you sell, a network router or switch to a company, and there's a back door into it. Then basically they can at any point log in.
Absolutely.
And have full access to your data.
They can come on and they can take everything you need or everything you're doing. The same way with the driving habits and stuff. That tells them how to promote their cars, how to build their cars.
Right.
It's good data.
Well, and there's a philosophy. It's far beyond that. It's a little bit more nefarious. Even the idea of when you go back to like TikTok and the kids is the idea that there are algorithms that literally, basically can almost rewire your brain. I mean, even like when you play games on your phone, these games are designed. They work with psychologists. They work with people that know how to manipulate a human's emotions.
They're made with the express purpose of manipulating.
Right. And so that's what we find is a lot of this stuff goes beyond just hardware. It becomes this sort of nefariousness of these AI algorithms.
It's just, we could have a real problem if China and Russia get mad at us, because China builds all these phones, all our cell phones, and they build quite a few of our computers, and they build a whole bunch of parts for computers and cars. And if they're putting their hardware in cars and shipping them over here, guess what? Your car could explode. I'm just telling you. I don't say that they're doing it, but I'm just telling you the opportunity is there. The door is open for a bad guy to do something bad. That's what I'm trying to say. Like when I told you about hackers getting in the cars and ruining their whatever they were doing. If you can build it, somebody can hack it. Is that right, Chuck? If you can build it, someone can hack it.
Right. And we saw that a lot with even, there was a story last week about people that were, you could get you literally could use their license plate, get the information, because even now with these, the car manufacturers, they have all this information about you. where you can go in and basically steal somebody's car by knowing, their maiden name or something like that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's just, this is getting out of hand is what it's doing. I know, Chuck, you wanted to talk about this. Hurricane Helene, 672 Kias at a Florida dealership. They had 672 cars in stock?
So they're the one that have all the cars.
Oh, my God. Ken Gainley estimates the value of the vehicles between $28 million and $30 million. I was going to say, if they're Kias, they're probably, the estimated value of all of them is probably 10 grand. Dealer Ken Ganley worked the equation out loud. 660 new and used vehicles, all losses, plus 12 customer cars that were in for service, oops, all totaled because of flooding from Hurricane Helene. Kia of Newport Richey in Florida, days after the hurricane and later tropical storm Helene, wreaked deadly havoc up and down the southeast coast. We know this. Ganley estimates the value of the totaled flooded cars, 28 to 30 million. We already know that. Or about $5,000 per vehicle. Oh, and at 5,000 vehicles, he estimates he'll pay about $3.5 million to cover the deductible, because the insurance company doesn't give you, you have a deductible on your insurance.
Right.
So he's going to have to pay $3.5 million just to cover the deductibles from the flooded cars. This hurricane really wreaks some havoc. Yeah,
well, there's, besides the obvious, there's an unknown death toll at this point, a lot of people missing and things like that. And it's, it affected places that normally don't get this kind of rain. I mean, the amount of rain was just unprecedented and things like that. I think, tens of billions of gallons fell and things like that. But one of the interesting things that I was following about this was there's a few stories that came out involving EVs. So one of which, for instance, was the idea that somebody in, I think it was Florida, they had a Tesla that obviously one of the biggest enemies of EVs is salt water.
Oh, yeah.
So the Tesla got wet. It was outside. It got wet in the flooding, and they backed it into their garage. Or at some point, the water got into the garage. I forget the exact story, but they actually had a camera in their garage that captured the whole thing, is that the Tesla caught fire and basically just on its own, just caught fire and burned
the
up.
house down?
I don't know if it burned the house down, but it definitely
burned the
caught,
Tesla down.
Yeah, it caught fire. So, that's obviously a thing is, if you're in that situation where even like you drive home through a flooded street, you park it in the garage, and then 8 hours later, the thing just goes up.
Yeah.
So there's
again, this is more stuff we have not dealt with.
Right. But on the flip side of it, there was a few people that were posting stories about. So one of the interesting things that you can do if you're properly set up with an EV is if you have a charged EV and the power goes out at your house, you can actually flip it around and turn it into a battery.
Right.
So there were a few people that were posting stories about how they were able to keep their house running. Like they were the only one in the neighborhood that had power.
Because they had a Tesla or something, yeah.
And they actually have, and I don't know if it's a Tesla or somebody else's, but they actually have a mode. So you basically flip the direction of the flow, but then it will keep it from discharging completely.
The Ford pickup truck,
the Lightning, yeah.
Yeah, the Lightning has very much the similar stuff. You can plug it into your house and you can run your sump pump or whatever. But I don't know how long that would last.
Well, and they were saying it could last up to a week. And again, you don't want to drain the battery completely. But even then, it's like, well, it's an interesting theory. But then the other problem becomes there are people that are saying they're not going to have power for months.
Yeah.
So you basically kill your EV battery to run your house for a week, and then you can't get anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Your house is out of juice again, and then car's out of juice.
Yeah, and you can't go anywhere now. So
you're stuck.
So I mean, again, it's an interesting turn of events where you can power your house from your car, but that's great for a short-term power outage of a day or two. But now you're talking, potentially weeks and months. How's that going to work out for them?
It's not going to work out for them. It's just not going to happen. And it's a nice thing, but it's not all that tried and true yet. Plus, we don't know. You don't even know if the car's going to catch fire or not now. I mean, everything.
Well, there were plenty of funny viral videos of people with Teslas filling up gas cans and things like that, and people making fun of them, going, like the one guy had his license plate was no gas, and he was filling up gas cans, and but.
I understand and I get it, but it's not the same, and they can be a problem. The electric vehicles can, and they don't have all the bugs yet. We got major bugs that we have to deal with.